Hello and welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Garrett, across the table from Jeff. How's it going?
Cut it close today. It's flying in from out of state.
You're bombing down the interstate from Portland, Maine.
I had my days all mixed up.
Here.
And I was, nice casual drive on the way home.
You're like, I'm going to order a pizza and hang out. And...
Oh, yeah. Oh, I had grand plans. There was a bottle of bourbon at home with my name on it. And then I got your text like, hey, anytime after 5:30.
You're like,
oh, no.
Damn it. So it all worked out. The reason that you were flying down the interstate that quickly is to get here in time to do our interview with Mark Vaughan, second vice president of the National Rifle Association. So we're going to have him on a little bit later on.
Yeah, got a great opportunity to have him join in, ask some NRA-related questions. But before we get to that, so there's been some doings in some circuit courts.
So the Fifth Circuit has held very recently that suppressors are not protected arms. On February the 6th, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in U.S. v. Peterson held that suppressors are not protected by the Second Amendment. Chief Judge Jennifer Elrod wrote in her opinion that suppressors are not, quote, arms that are protected by the text of to keep and bear arms. Under the Bruin test, if a device is an arm, right, the burden is on the government to show that there's a restriction that's consistent with text, history, and tradition of regulation at the time of the founding, right? So that's why it's important to decide whether or not something is an arm. Under Heller, the Second Amendment protects all devices that are, quote, bearable arms, unquote, even those that didn't exist at the founding. The Fifth Circuit in this case, this Peterson case, said that in order for a device to be a, quote, bearable arm, it must be a weapon in and of itself and not just what the court termed as an accessory. So she's starting to get a little dangerous waters here.
That's, that is a, uncomfortably vague way of approaching it.
Well, yeah, she's like, yeah, okay, fine. If it's going to be an arm protected by the Second Amendment, then it must be in and of itself a weapon. The problem with that is that the Supreme Court's really already ruled differently from that. So anyway, we'll get to that. Peterson, the defendant in this case, argued that suppressors are an integral part of a firearm, right? Because a suppressor without a firearm is nothing. It's nothing, right? So it's part of the shooting system. Same way that a barrel, trigger, safety, optics, all of that stuff would be, right? It's an integral part of the
I see where he's coming from.
So the court held that the Second Amendment only protects those things that are required for the operation of the gun, not just things that are compatible with them, which feels a little squishy to me. So she's basically she seems to be drawing this line between items that are required in order for a gun to operate. Barrel, trigger, slides, whatever, okay?
Frame, action, barrel. It's what we teach in the basics.
Lock, stock, and barrel. Yeah. And things that are what she considers to be accessories.
Tangentially related, things you can or cannot add.
And she says that anything that is not required for the fundamental action of the gun is an accessory and therefore not protected by the Second Amendment.
It's loose. It's very loose.
Well,
off the top of my head, part of the issue you run into is a technological question. Firearms are made to have modular components now. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So when you say something is not required for a firearm to operate, are sights required for a firearm to operate? No. Is it a good idea to have sights on a firearm? Yeah. I would argue yes.
Yeah. So to take that argument to its ridiculous extreme, if you argue that sights are not, required in order to operate a firearm, can you therefore ban them?
Well, and this would speak to the question too of, a shoulderable stock is not required for a shotgun to operate.
That's right.
However, if you cut that stock off and now the overall length is shorter,
you're going to prison.
You have created a short barrel rifle. So it's a little bit of a linguistic adventure to say, what is or is not necessarily required.
Yeah.
For a firearm to operate.
The problem is Supreme Court has already decided this. As far as I'm concerned, this goes directly against Bruin. The Bruin case cited Catano, which we know because it was a case in Massachusetts, right? It was the stun gun case from
It's
back
one
in
of the most
2016.
unbelievably ridiculous
Yeah.
cases.
Right. Unanimous decision by the U.S. Supreme Court saying, Massachusetts, you're idiots and you can't do that. Anyway, the case, the Bruin cited Catano and said clearly that arms, right, the definition of arms covers modern instruments that facilitate armed self-defense. Keyword there is facilitate. So if a part makes a gun safer or more accurate, to me, it clearly falls under the umbrella of an arm.
Yeah, you're going to get no argument from me. And part of that whole, the fear of suppressors is, people
God.
see the TV and the movies are, they played GoldenEye on the N64 where they shoot and, the enemy or the whoever doesn't react to it, right?
Yeah, right.
It's John Wick
Nobody can
and
hear
Common in the train station and no one can hear it going. But it's like, realistically, for people who've not been around, you're taking it from ear-shatteringly... damagingly loud,
Right, to like popping eardrums kind of noise,
down to the volume of a jackhammer.
still loud and obnoxious.
So it's the idea that there's going to be this, like you were saying, just a little. That's not how it really works.
It's ridiculous, and it doesn't fool the shot spotters, and it doesn't. People can still hear it just fine. It just brings it down below, like you said, the pain threshold or the damage threshold.
I know, and for the gun control folks that say, we should be more like Europe, it's like there are European countries where it's considered crass and rude to shoot without a suppressor.
It's rude, yeah.
How dare you make all that noise? And then we end up in the state that we are in now where you're making too much noise. Well, how about we use suppressors? Well, that's not okay.
No, because those assassins use those.
I know we get complaints about, people build homes closer and closer to gun ranges and then they don't like the sound. And hey, I'd be more than happy to remedy that for you, except Massachusetts doesn't allow that.
So this Fifth Circuit decision brings up another question for me, and we'll get your feeling on it. Now that I'm sure you haven't had a chance to read it, so I'm just going to present it to you, and you can give me your answer. This ruling seems to present a contradiction. I hope the Supreme Court will clarify it. The Fifth Circuit decision in this case says that suppressors are not arms because basically it's convenient for her desired outcome, right? That's tail wagging the dog. That's what she wanted to find, so therefore she molded her decision around that. I wonder what implications this decision would have to the NFA, National Firearms Act, and other federal laws. So the NFA classifies suppressors as firearms for the purpose of regulating them and bringing them under federal regulatory authority, right? They call suppressors firearms so that they can make you fill out
of regulating them.
Right, so that they can make you fill out a 4473, do the background check, pay the VIG, the tax stamp and all the rest of that stuff. So, if the Fifth Circuit holds that suppressors are not bearable arms, then it seems to me that the NFA is not in a position to dictate what an arm is or isn't.
No, I've
You hear me? Are suppressors bearable arms and protected by the Second Amendment, or is the NFA invalidated?
well,
I know how you're going to answer that.
I would prefer.
Does the NFA have the authority to call something a firearm or not? Because it's in direct contravention of what she's just saying in this case.
I'm really going to have to chew on that to come up with an intelligent answer. That might be one to we'll have to bring a lawyer in and ask to get somewhat of a legal opinion.
Yeah.
If the NFA is going to say that it is a firearm and therefore subject to the National Firearms Act, and this judge says that they are not a firearm, well, I see how that could arguably nullify that piece of the NFA to say, well, if it's not a firearm, it can't be covered under the National Firearms Act.
Exactly.
But then at the same time, then it just opens it up for blanket bans.
Well, whatever.
As a non-protected arm, so you're kind of...
As the question currently
damned if you do,
stands...
damned if you don't.
You're right, yeah. But if a suppressor is like nothing more than an accessory, right? Like a muzzle brake, for example. They're not federally regulated because they're not firearms.
I don't think she's saying that they're not federally regulated. I think she's saying it's not.
No, I think that she's trying to have it both ways.
In both cases, they're trying to define suppressor in such a way as it fits the story
Exactly.
they want to tell.
Yeah, they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to, call it a firearm in this one circumstance where they can keep you from having it, and then they're calling it an accessory in this other case where it's convenient for them to ban it.
I think it's hey, listen, if you want to take it to the Supreme Court, you have my full full moral and emotional support. But
think
don't
about
know.
the further implications while you're chewing on this.
Fair
what about
enough.
pistol braces?
Oh, my position on pistol.
I know
don't
your
think it's a
position,
joke.
but what is the implication of this Fifth Circuit ruling on that? Is it an accessory or is it a firearm? Think about that.
Well, the ATF needs to get their stuff straightened out.
Yeah.
But I mean,
So anyway,
I don't
open questions.
I don't expect. I mean, it does raise a question, and hey, maybe it's arguable that it makes it ripe for a Supreme Court ruling. Given the fact that the Supreme Court still hasn't made moves on Snopes or Ocean State Tactical, which they were relisted for conference for this past Friday.
Yep.
I haven't seen anything as far as Supreme Court orders
there hasn't been.
today, although they did release orders.
They released orders,
didn't
but
have
they
anything
didn't.
in them. So
Yeah, they didn't mention anything about Snope or Ocean State.
I think before we would see them tackle the subject of suppressors, we would see them tackle like the assault weapons ban stuff, the magazine
probably.
capacity ban stuff, licensing as a general practice.
Yeah, but to
before we
me, this
see-
goes to the it's a specific case under specific circumstances. But to me, it goes to the scope of the NFA. Just how much power does the ATF have to declare something a firearm under the NFA?
Nothing if you don't comply.
That's, as far as
There you
I'm
go.
concerned, the answer is zero. But
Compliance is voluntary, sir. For my agent that's listening, that's a joke.
that's totally a joke. We totally don't mean that. Oh, man. All right.
Coming up after the break, we're going to be talking to Mark Vaughan, second VP, National Rifle Association. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with the man himself. All right, joining us for the show, we have Mark Vaughan, second vice president of the National Rifle Association, newly elected, or still relatively newly elected, right?
That's right. 8 months in now, roughly.
All right, but by means of a little bit of background, because your resume and your CV is impressive. So 30+ year career, owner operator of Vaughan Foods in Moore, Oklahoma. 25+ years active member of the Oklahoma City Gun Club with over 2,000 members. 20+ years of involvement with the NRA, instructor, law enforcement, Women on Target, Scouts of America. Reserve deputy sheriff for Oklahoma County. You served on the tactical team. You were named Law Enforcement Officer of the Year in 2014. You got the Award of Valor in January 2015. Vice chair of NRA's Education Training Committee, the NRA Clubs and Associations Committee, and NRA's Law Enforcement Assistance Committee. And now, as far as the NRA is concerned, the second VP. Also currently the president of the Oklahoma Rifle Association, as well as, being a husband, father, and all the personal things.
All right.
So,
I've been busy.
yeah, that's
Quite a resume.
Yeah, you sure you have the right guy, Jeff? I guess I'm the right guy. Yeah. Okay.
Mark, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with us tonight.
Jeff, Garrett, it's a pleasure and an honor to do so, and thank you for having me on the show.
kind of just to, get to know like your background in shooting. What got you introduced into shooting, and as a younger guy, and what is it that you enjoy most about firearms? Are you a hunter, collector, history, defense? What's your preference and your flavor for firearms?
My gosh, this could take a long, long time. So I'm probably like you two and many on your show. I'm a lifelong self-professed gun nut. As a kid, I loved to take guns apart, see how they worked, and of course, I've been a hunter and a shooter even as a young person. But just fascinated, by firearms and the history of arms in the world. And I am a gun collector. And a hunter. I like my favorite are Damascus barreled Parker shotguns. I shoot. I have a collection of those, and
Wow.
I take those afield 30 days to 40 days a year for quail, rough grouse, etc. So I enjoy that aspect, that nostalgia, that history, that aspect of taking a firearm out that was made 120 years ago and taking a a quail, harvesting a quail or a grouse or a pheasant with that gun. It just it's something that means a lot to me, that history and legacy of firearms, not only in this country, but, you know, in the world in general. It's fascinating, the development of arms to me.
Yeah,
That
that's
it
just
is.
I can't imagine taking out a Parker shotgun for
Right, for
in the
grouse.
New England weather.
That's right. That's amazing.
But how are things going in Oklahoma? How's the Second Amendment landscape look for you guys for the Oklahoma Rifle Association?
Yeah, about 2.5 years ago, I was asked to lead the Oklahoma Rifle Association, which had fallen into some hard times due to some leadership issues. The ORA was actually established in 1927, so it's nearing its 100-year mark. And for most of that time period, it had been an active and vibrant association. And like I said, probably 10 years ago, the ORA, though I've been a member of the ORA for a number, many years, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, it had fallen on hard times, kind of a lack of focus and leadership. And myself and some other patriots helped stand the ORA back up. Now, of course, Oklahoma is a very gun-friendly Second Amendment place, one of the most friendly to the Second Amendment and our foundational freedoms of any of the 50 states.
Yeah.
So that is the good news. But like so many states, you could mention, New Mexico and Colorado and Oregon and others, that 20 years ago that the folks there thought their foundational freedoms, such as the Second Amendment, were not at risk, and they've come to realize that they are indeed under attack. And so strong state associations, of course, like Gold, and what you have there in Massachusetts, you guys are on the front lines. I don't think Oklahoma is quite on the front lines, but it is still important work, because the most important task is to be ready, right, for these, and that's what we strive to do at the ORA. And it's an honor to lead that association.
Well said. Yeah, and there is a difference between folks like Oklahoma and folks like Massachusetts. I mean, we're on par for being the worst state in the country for gun rights. But as you say, no matter where you are, the work is important. Everything is under attack.
Yeah, I like to think that Massachusetts is the Massachusetts, the California, the New York. Those are the testing grounds for the gun control crowd, state level and federal level. What we see is those little pockets and those little organizations just cut and paste each other's legislation from all over the place and just start carpet bombing them into places that didn't have Second Amendment issues before.
That is very true. We see initiatives like that, even in Oklahoma. Now they get thoroughly trounced, right, immediately. But yes, that without an active and vibrant state association and a grassroots momentum here in the state, those things would get through eventually.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe next time it wouldn't get shot down so quickly, or
That's right.
Well, one of the things we find is that the one of the big challenges is the youth, is getting the next generation into firearms, the next generation into shooting and hunting in the outdoors and collecting and appreciating the history. So as long as you guys have generations to come, you might stay in good shape.
Well, I think us folks at the NRA and in the state associations, we're the generational bearers of that trust, right? We have got to. That's the most important thing we can do, is to pass on these foundational precepts on to our next generation. With many places they're not teaching civics, and history is not taught in school. It's a concept that is becoming a little harder for each generation to get a hold of, and we've got to make sure that we keep that right there in front of them.
Yeah. So turning to, since you brought up the NRA,
right.
So what do you think of the trajectory that the NRA has been on since, I don't know, the last 20, 25 years?
I was going to say, in my time, we've seen the Charlton Heston, my cold dead hand speech.
That's right.
In the last
couple of years
months or so.
Sure.
Courts, judges, attorney generals really taking a swing at making the NRA a relic of the past.
You bet. Well, as a colleague of mine said, in World War II, the flak cannons were over the prime targets, and the NRA has been the recipient of a lot of flack over the years. And if we weren't hitting those prime targets, we wouldn't be receiving the flack. The NRA, like all organizations, it's a 154-year-old organization, and we enjoyed tremendous success politically. And that put us in the crosshairs of these flak guns. And, one of those was the Attorney General and the state of New York. And based upon Donald Trump's success in the 2016 elections, he even admitted it himself that the NRA played a huge role in the outcome of his election. And so, we were targeted. And unfortunately, there were some things that were out of order with the NRA. Yeah. I will say that those things were in fact true, but we weren't given a chance to remedy those things. It was like the door closed, we're coming after you, where another organization, maybe, with a different political ilk, would have been given a lot of runway to get those things corrected. But no, we were attacked with all the force and vigor of the state of New York. And, in the end, we prevailed. We did. But it was very costly to our organization. We did lose the trust of a good number of our members, and understandably so. However, our mission, is as viable, and we have reinvigorated this organization. And though these things that happened that gave rise to this didn't happen overnight, we're not going to get the NRA turned around overnight either. We have done so much in that regard in the past 8 or 9 months. We did have an overhaul of our leadership, and I'm part of that overhaul as second vice president. I was elected in May of 2024 from the board, from the floor at the board of directors meeting in Dallas, and that was an unprecedented event. I mean, usually that's through a complex nominating system, and it's kind of an heir apparent, and it rolls on. Well, this was a sea change in how things had been done previously. Along with me, elected was our first vice president, Bill Bockenberg, who hails from Pennsylvania, next door near you guys. And our new EVP, Doug Hamlin, who is, though he had been with the NRA about 10 years, was the director of publications for the NRA, and has done such a great job with our official journals and publications over the years, and has done a heck of a job wringing out change within the organization. We have more to do, there's no question, but we've moved people around, we've gotten rid of some people, we've brought new people on, all in the goal of making a better, more responsive, and more transparent organization.
Yeah, every journey starts with that first step. So what was the reaction to the election results and to hearing your own name being called out? Was that a relief? Was it, stressful? What was the vibe there?
I can't remember if I voted for myself or not, if that helps to clarify things. No, in all seriousness, it was a robust discussion and election. It was done fairly and with good transparency right there on the board. The meeting was still in open session, so we had a great number of rank and file NRA members in the gallery who witnessed this, which I was appreciative of. It was democracy at work, and I think the right team prevailed. We're going to make some mistakes, but I guarantee you we're not going to misuse one penny of our members' hard-earned money. We ran and we're running. We ran on a platform of transparency, and we're operating on a platform of transparency. We have a new chief compliance officer that reports not to to staff, but reports to the board of directors.
Excellent.
And we have robust outside auditing in place. We have a robust whistleblower program. I mean, so we have mechanisms in place that we didn't have before. But as we all know, humans being humans, you have to, those mechanisms have to be backed up by trust and transparency and honesty. And that's where we're at. You have a team here that was not going to tolerate one inch of crossing a line into that. And so that's where it starts with, because you can circumvent all the mechanisms in the world if you work hard enough. We have a team that is committed to transparency and honesty.
Right on. And I think that's going to be really well received and well appreciated. So what is the current role? So looking at the different roles and positions you were talking about, executive vice president and all, and your role as second vice president, what falls under your role as second VP?
Well, I think it's a broad and varying role. As mentioned in my introduction, I have 35 years or better experience in the corporate world. I took a company public back in 2017 on the NASDAQ. I have run large organizations. Not that matter of fact, I made any mistake imaginable. I made it a few times. So I am far from perfect. But I am helping guide the creation of new policies, looking at our staffing, helping to guide the executive vice president, along with input from our president and first vice president, to help guide this new day at the NRA. So that is my role. I bring a new aspect and a new vision to help the staff at the NRA. And of course, as second vice president, I was elected by the board of directors, so I help broker their thoughts and ideas in through the committee system and on into the staff and operations of the NRA. And I spend a lot of time out speaking with NRA members at different events. For instance, last week I was in the six degree below zero weather in Des Moines, Iowa, and
chilly.
It was a little. It was cold enough to get your attention, I can assure you that. But met with a great many members. We had a day at the state capitol where we met numerous state level elected officials and legislators, and so the message of this new NRA, the NRA 2.0, is being delivered on a one-on-one basis. I mean, that's how you gain trust with people. I mean, it's one thing to have a marketing campaign, and we do marketing for sure. But to go and set and caucus with a group of 20 or 30 activist NRA members and activists over a dinner, or meet them at the state capitol and shake their hand, look them in the eye, and tell them about the new things that we're doing, that's getting it done. And unfortunately, that's not fast work. It's one group at a time, one city at a time, and myself, and other executives are out there each week. I believe our EVP Doug Hamlin was 6 weeks straight this year on the road thus far, and that says a lot, because getting that message out one-on-one, handshake to handshake, is vitally important for our organization right now.
Excellent. And that kind of answers the next question. It's as we know, trust and confidence it's difficult to earn, but it's pretty easy to lose. And I think getting out there face to face with people and interacting the way that you are is going to go a long way towards getting a lot of that trust and confidence back.
Well, we, Garrett, we think so. And matter of fact, we think that's about the only way it's going to happen. I have participated. I was at the Great American Outdoor Show, here 3 weeks ago, roughly, and got the chance to spend several days there visiting with a great many members. I participated in a town hall in Southern California a month or so before that. We have many such events scheduled as we move into this year.
What was that like in California?
Well, California, we next to Texas. Now, at one time, California had more NRA members than any other state. Now, I believe it's Texas, but still, there are a great number of NRA members still active in Texas, in the state of California.
Yeah,
and we met in the LA area, and we had I want to say about 175 folks in attendance. And again, these were activists, gun club presidents, training counselors, those sort of folks that, and regular NRA members as well. But we wanted to get some people in there that could listen to our message, and if they liked what they heard, go back and tell 10 others or 100 others that they have interaction with. And we were well received. We got some tough questions. The political climate in California is one that our message can be muted. Like some other areas, we can be tamped down a little bit, and we let those California NRA members know we spend more money in the state of California than we spend in any other state for gun rights. And they didn't know that, right?
Huh.
They knew that was the case 10 years ago, but they didn't know that it was still the case, and it is. Many organizations, claim to be out there fighting for your gun rights. And look, they're good organizations. I'm not saying they're not, but no one has what the NRA has. I mean, we're at the table. We're still, in spite of our weakened state that we're moving out of, we're still spending more than any other organization out there in support and defense of your rights as an American citizen to keep and bear arms.
Well, what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges you guys are going to face? Kind of short term, long term, especially as rebuilding that ground in the Second Amendment advocacy space, as some people have migrated to other organizations or look to other outlets for their Second Amendment. I don't know what the word would be. Second Amendment advocacy, I guess.
Sure. Well, during this lawfare phase that we have just emerged out of in the past few months, I mean, we were fighting for our life as an organization, and it took not only treasure by way of dollars, but also the focus of the NRA. Our attorneys, our staff, our board members, our leadership was focused on survival, right? So that in some areas created a vacuum out there that let other groups, move in. And we're not going to regain that lost ground right away. It's going to be, like I said, in this one-on-one, shaking hands, looking people in their eye. But the good news is this lawfare is behind us. I mean, we've closed the books on that. We are hiring new staff. We have 20 positions at corporate headquarters, not just at headquarters, but in staffing that we intend to fill this year.
That's great.
And guys, that's going to go toward programs, clubs and associations. Looking at our org chart, we've had 6 positions of what we call club liaisons. These are regional teams that go out and make sure these clubs around the country are getting the support from the NRA they need, whether that's competitions, whether it's training, range development, on and on. All the things, the multitude of things the NRA does just boggles your mind. But due to staffing pressures, both COVID and lawfare, we had to reduce staff dramatically. We're rebuilding those programs. So there's no magic sauce. It's just rolling up your sleeves and getting to work on a club by club, a person by person, a training counselor by training counselor basis. That's what it's going to take. And it's tedious work. It's slow work, but it builds that solid foundation that we have to operate on, right?
Sure.
You can't drive across a bridge that's unsound. And so we've got some structural work yet to do. we've done a lot in the past 8 or 9 months, but it is that work is accelerating now that the New York AG case and the lawfare associated with that is behind us. You
Well,
bet.
that's great news, and it's great to hear that. The whole New York AG thing, anybody who pays attention to it knows that it was a campaign promise that ultimately went unfulfilled. But I mean, you run for office with the stated goal of getting the NRA.
Oh yeah, someone was trying to make their name and make their career off of taking down that organization.
Yeah, fighting back for it. That's great. As far as in we get certainly from a member's perspective that things had to kind of contract a little bit while this was all going on, and it's great to hear that we're getting ready to we're kind of emerging back into the light a little bit. As far as other organizations goes, I've always kind of felt like there's a seat at the table for everybody. Everybody's got other national organizations. They've got their niches. The NRA, of course, is the big is the Jupiter above them all, kind of. I liken it to Jupiter, sucking up all the asteroids while the smaller organizations go and kind of,
Right.
But I think that there's room at the table for everybody, even though, you have to admit, to some degree, everybody's competing for attention and everybody's competing for membership dollars and all that stuff. And that's just the nuts and bolts of it. But at the end of the day, it's great to see that kind of there's new optimism. And like I said, we're kind of maybe emerging back into the light a little bit.
Well, there's no question. Optimism, and with the attendant knowledge, there's lots of work to do. But optimism, both with our staff, our employees and our staff, our board. This has been a time of upheaval. Particularly the past 8 or 9 months. But stabilization is important. We're working together. We're getting, in many parts of our organization, we're well underway. In all parts of our organization, we are underway to make these changes. Like I said, we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to correct all ills overnight. But I can tell you that the members' money is being looked after, every cent of it. And
Yes.
That's the good news. And you're right. These other organizations, they do have a place, but we are competing for member dollars, and we're in a society that's not quite the joiners they used to be, right?
We're seeing that here. Yeah. Oh yeah. We're seeing that here.
Yeah. I mean, whether you're talking, the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts or, whatever organization you can about name any, they're struggling with numbers.
Sure.
And so we've got to get our numbers. Our numbers are stabilizing. Actually, we have to get those numbers up arrow, get back. Our first goal is to get back to that 5 million mark that we were at not so many years ago. 7 years ago, and that's a good goal for us. And I believe that we can do it.
That's reachable.
The good
Absolutely.
news is, it is. It is reachable. The good news is, since 2020, there are, and no one knows the exact figure, folks, but there are 15 or 20 million brand new gun owners, right? We have yet to access that group in a significant way. And we've got to figure that out. And we have some programs underway. I think a lot of that is these younger folks want, they want up-to-date information, but they also want to connect to the history, the legacy of the NRA. I think people are striving for that as well. They want to connect to something, and we have something for them to connect for. I mean, with you look at, and I'm still finding things that the NRA does that I didn't know that we do. We have,
wait, we have one of those offices?
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, we spend, for instance, the NRA supports law school programs that help law students understand not just Second Amendment laws, but also hunting legislation, because hunting laws can be complex. So we have a whole team working on hunting and conservation that I didn't know about, that's really focusing on educating our judges and our attorneys on how to defend and support our hunting laws across the country. So, I mean, stuff like that bubbles up all the time. You don't see an organization that has so much breadth as does the NRA. I mean, I mentioned range development, training and education, competitions programs, both here and internationally. And, not to mention our Second Amendment advocacy. So we have an adaptive shooting, that's for folks with physical challenges. We have a whole adaptive shooting department, right? So it's on and on and on what the NRA does. And I don't think the NRA has done a good job telling the world about some of the things that we do. We just do it. We support it. We throw millions of dollars at these things because they're important for our community. But a lot of people don't realize everything that we do as an organization.
Oh, it's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge, especially from an advocacy perspective, because everything you defeat before it becomes a problem is hard to get people to understand.
Yeah, right.
Right.
It's like, it would be so much worse
for
if we
lack of a better term, the bullet that they may or may not have dodged.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it is interesting to talk about the membership. We have these discussions with Gun Owners Action League, especially at the board meetings and everything else, is that it's like we get plenty of donations, but you ask people about joining and they go, I don't know, especially now, I don't know if I want to be on a list and so on and so on. But I try to tell these people, it's like, listen, at today's market prices for the cost of a box of decent ammo, you can join pretty much all of the organizations.
Yeah, right. Yeah. For a year.
It's not a heavy lift.
Yeah. It's not that expensive for crying out loud.
Yeah, I haven't put it to that way to anyone, but you're right. I mean, a box of 45 ACP, I don't know what, $30, you could join the NRA, right? For almost that, or $40. I don't know what it.
But it's good. It sounds like, with positive morale and positive momentum, you can get a lot of stuff done. So let's paint it in like a hypothetical. So let's say, you're cleaning out the back offices and you find the dusty old lamp and the ghost of John Moses Browning pops out. And he says, all right, you got 3 wishes, one for you, one for the NRA, and then one for the Second Amendment as a whole. What would you go with? What do you think those 3 wishes would be? And how do we, and I say we like the NRA, the members, the leadership, how do we make that kind of stuff happen?
Wow, that's a good question and a broad one. I think for the NRA, we have some definite goals for this year. One is concealed carry reciprocity across the country. That's a big deal for our members. You look at. I'm a little older than you guys, but I would not have thought when I was 25 years old that you could have a concealed, even in Oklahoma, you had to go to the sheriff, and it was a may issue sort of situation. It was an owner's process. To think that we have all these states, I don't know what we're up to now, but it's nearly 30 states with concealed carry.
Yeah.
Many of those states now, like Oklahoma, have gone to constitutional carry. I mean, you look at the NRA, of course, led that fight, and no question about it. You look at the changes we've wrought and the lives that we've saved as an organization. Our members supporting that organization have saved countless lives. And, our opposition 30 years ago, there'd be shootouts in the street every day. None of that. The responsibility of an American and a U.S. citizen exercising his or her rights is just amazing. It just is amazing. So I wish for the NRA that we get our membership arrow back up. We've stabilized it. It needs to go up arrow, and that we deploy a communication and an outreach to those folks, those prospective members out there, that we're here for them, that we are doing the daily slog work that it takes to keep their rights in play, right? And that's what we're doing. But it's a tough message to get across. People want an instant gratification. They want to pay something and get something. Well, they're getting something, but it's incremental, and it can be hard to put your finger on what the NRA does every day for their rights, whether you're a gun manufacturer or just or simply a citizen in your foundational freedoms, protecting those freedoms.
Yeah, I think Amazon ruined that when you can just order something and it shows up next day. It's like, hey, listen, I sent you $20. Why do I not have
right?
Why do I not have everything I want
How come
right now?
Massachusetts isn't constitutional carry yet? I gave you like $30 last year. Yeah,
exactly. We don't teach civics in school anymore, so I think folks can be. It's tough for them to understand the slow process of some of these things in our legislative process, in our lawmaking process, that it can take years and even decades sometime to make these changes. But you know what? It's our process. It's the best in the world, and it's a framework that we have to live in. But my wish is that all those 15 or 20 million new gun owners would understand how important the NRA is to where we are today, and all the things that we're doing for these folks now, and will continue to do in the future.
Yeah, I mean it's the oldest. If I remember the number correctly, it's the oldest civil rights organization
in the country,
still running.
Yeah,
no question, and it's a proud heritage that I certainly am proud to be part of it, and honored to be part of it. And speaking for the many million, we're less than 4 million members, but speaking for most of them, they're proud to be an NRA member. The problem is you run into people that say, I ask, are you an NRA member? Well, my granddad was, so I must be. Well, that's not exactly how that works. We need for you to join up as well, partner. So we have a lot of people that identify as NRA members. They're technically not, right? That's a frustrating aspect of the NRA. It's an institution. It's kind of like it's kind of like many other institutions. They just feel like that they're naturally in it, and sometimes they're not. But
yeah, well, whether they're members or not, I mean, the NRA is still fulfilling that role and representing the firearms owner, whether or not they're NRA members.
Yeah, you bet. And I do want to say that this most recent general election, the presidential election, the NRA figured in that as well. Now we didn't spend the money that we had in the past because we didn't have the money. We'd spend it on lawfare, but we still ran several million official journals and publications and outreach, both at the grassroots level, local level, and at the national level, that did have an impact. You look at those swing states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and some others. The NRA played a role in that, as well as hunters and sportsmen as well, for sure.
So kind of in that vein, President Trump released an executive order having to do with the Second Amendment last week. We talked about it last time on the podcast last time around. It seemed to. Are you familiar with that executive order?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right.
I don't have the exact verbiage in front of me, but yeah.
Do you have a general impression on it? My own was that it was a lot of like, we're going to circle back to this. Let's look at stuff and we're going to circle back. Do you have a different feeling than that? It didn't feel like it was very specific, but it was still nice to hear people say the general words.
Yeah, Garrett, I concur. I do believe it probably needs. It needs a further addressing at some point, a further refinement. But, it was a solid statement of support for this most foundational freedom that the Second Amendment affords. And, I will tell you that the NRA has been at the White House, since the election, and that we're seeing tremendous support from the administration, as you would expect, but we didn't expect anything less. But the president and his team are putting their money where the mouth is, and really, I think you're going to see more robust support out of President Trump in this term, even in his first term.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
You had a question from a friend of the first show, I believe.
Oh yeah, so I I reached out to some friends and I said, hey, if we have a guy from the NRA on, what would you want to ask? Some of the questions were appropriate. Some of them
are not really.
were less appropriate.
Right.
But the one I selected said, what's the plan for the training department and bringing some of their content up to date? So I think he was talking about like doing the NRA basic pistol classes and knowing the guys like, listen, we don't teach Weaver stance anymore. It's like single action revolvers aren't really a thing, at least for us in Massachusetts. So,
Right. Look, the training and education programs with the NRA have suffered during all of this. And our EVP, I mentioned the new staffing that we're increasing staffing by 20 or so folks this year. We're going to see a tremendous focus on education and training. I mean, it's just these 20 million, 15 million new gun owners, that's what they're looking for. They want, they want to be responsible gun owners. And many of these folks are not just first-time gun owners, they're first-time gun handlers, right?
Sure.
So
yeah.
we have got to, and we are in the process of revamping our basic courses, updating the information in there. There's some talk, actually more than talk, but there's some momentum around more videos, more video-based training. So that is going to get a lot of attention. It has already. It's going to get increased attention. We have over 100,000 NRA instructors on our rolls right now, and those are people, those are instructors that are paying their dues, maintaining their credentials. There may be, of those 100 or so thousand, obviously there's different levels of activity, amongst those. There's some that are highly active that do training events many times a month to, once a quarter to once every other year. So there's a broad spectrum of involvement and activism there. But they're still there. They're getting our material. They're understanding what we're doing. So these 100,000 or so instructors, and then you have training counselors and all that is part of that group as well. That they're ready for more input from the NRA. They're begging for it. They're needing it, and that may have been the impetus for your question, Jeff. But there's more coming in that regard. Much more coming.
Well, I mean, I haven't done any research and have any numbers to actually back my next statement up, but I would estimate that pound for pound, dollar for dollar, the NRA teaches more people about safe firearm handling than any other organization in the world.
Yeah.
That would be a true statement.
Even Jeff and I are both NRA instructors, and we teach licensing classes here in Massachusetts because it's one of the requirements is to take a safety class here in Massachusetts. Okay. So we both teach, and we're pretty active. And one of the things that we say every time we stand up in class is NRA, love it or hate it, it's still the single largest training and gun safety organization on the planet, bar none. There's just nobody else comes close.
You add to that the fact we also administer hunter education training across many states currently. So that augments that number. But look, programs must be refreshed. New thinking must be brought in its time. In that you cannot you can't relax on that. You've got to update and constantly improve those programs. And I do believe we had a pause in some of that for a while. We're getting back engaged.
Excellent. I had a question, it's a little bit off topic. If you feel comfortable speaking about it, we'd love to hear from your perspective. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Your private life, your corporate life, was as president and CEO of Vaughan Foods in Moore, Oklahoma.
Right.
Are you willing to speak about what happened in 2014?
Well, sure, Garrett. I'm good with speaking about that. Have no problem with that. To kind of give you a background, we
Don't
we
mean to throw you on the
mentioned
spot.
we mentioned a Western port city with that name. I sold my business to a company that one of the first things they did, we had armed security in our facilities, and they didn't believe that was the right thing to do, nor did they believe concealed carry or was a good thing. So one of the first things that acquiring company did was to remove those things from now. I was chief operating officer of that facility after I sold it. I was there. So give you that's a little bit of background that kind of got us to where we were. So in late September 2014. So gosh, it's hard to believe that's been
More than 10 years, yeah.
more than 10 years ago. It's just how time can go by that quickly. But it earlier that day, and I wasn't involved in this, we had an employee who was had become quite agitated with another employee, and had actually been causing some other trouble, and was suspended, was not fired, but was suspended for a period of 3 days pending an investigation, and was asked to leave the facility, and did so. Well, about around roughly 4 p.m. that day, that individual returned to the facility with a large knife. I mean, it wasn't quite a machete, but it was close to it. It was a large. It wasn't a knife that we used at the facility. It was a personal weapon that this gentleman had. But he returned to the facility, got in an altercation, attacked a female employee, ultimately severing her head, and went to attack another coworker with specificity. He came to do harm to certain people, and I was in my office in another part of the facility. It's about 150,000 square foot complex, so I wasn't right there, but I received a call as this was beginning to take place. I ran down out of my office, grabbed my AR-15 from my vehicle, and I want to say this was at a time when we were changing shifts, so there were about 350 people employed at the facility, and so we had one shift leaving and another one arriving, so it was lots of people there. And I ran to this part of the facility, and there were, people screaming, and there were some, because he had also attacked some other people in this process, and who managed to get away from him. And these people were streaming out of the building, and I ran in with my AR-15, and found some people there. They kind of pointed me in the direction where this subject was, and I came around a corner, and he was actively working his knife on the throat of another person. I yelled, he ran, I ran after him, and then he appeared around a corner running at me with this knife, and at close range. I mean, he was about 20 yards away. I fired 3 rounds, and I struck him twice, and he went down. And I secured the knife from him. He did survive his wounds of that day, and went on later to stand trial, and was convicted of murder and several counts of assault and battery, and currently serving a life sentence without parole in the state penitentiary in Oklahoma. So it was a horrific incident. However, I am glad that I was there at that time with the training that I had and the rifle that I had that was able to stop this, because there's no telling what other, there would have been other people killed. There's no question.
Oh, no question.
And that's not bragging. I'm not a hero. It's just, I'm happy that I was there and could be used as an instrument in that way.
Well, that's a powerful story. I mean, we talk about defensive gun uses in defense of your own life, other people's lives, and I mean,
Right.
there's no more clear cut case than that. The second lady, she survived. Is that correct?
Yes, she did. She did
Good.
survive. She spent quite a bit of time in the hospital, but she made a full recovery over time. Correct.
Good. That's good to hear, and it's good that you were there. And I mean, we all like to think that we would respond similarly in similar circumstances. But I'm not even knowing anybody involved. I'm grateful that you were there and ready to react that way. So that's a powerful story.
Well, thank you, Garen. I think that incident is, and you said it certainly better than I, but that is the example of the most foundational freedom we have, is to protect ourselves and protect those, our loved ones, protect those who were put on this earth to care for. So, I have as you might imagine, I have a protective, a very, I don't know what to call it, a protective manner about me. I believe that people that work for me and around me, I owe to them a lot of things as being their servant leader. And the most basic thing is their safety.
There you go. Well said. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's
You bet.
That's a strong story.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Mark, before we wrap up, about the NRA, about Oklahoma? Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I've come to know a guy you know very well, Mr. Jim Wallace, and in spite of being bribed by his different rub, his different meat seasonings, he makes sure I stay well stocked in. He is a great guy. He is doing great work at the NRA. I mean, he's really taken on our many bylaws and amendments that need to be addressed. He's waded into that. That's tough work, and he's waded into that in a very good way. I've come to know him well and respect him, and I appreciate his service to the gun owners of Massachusetts. The other thing I do want to say is that the NRA is back. We're transparent. We're operating the organization like it needs to be. Have some patience with us. All changes require, we're going to do some things that may not work, but we're going to be honest in everything that we do. So if your members and those NRA members out there would, there's still a lot of folks that like to talk poorly of the NRA. That day's over. I mean, it's a free country. You say whatever you want, but the NRA, that's history. The NRA is underway. We're doing the right thing. Give us a chance. That's all we can ask. Support us with your annual membership. It's it's $45. It means a lot, that $45 to us. So we appreciate your support, and spread the good news about the NRA.
There you go. Good to hear.
Yep, Jim's been coming into our board meetings for Gun Owners Action League, and it's like, oh, here's
the latest from the NRA.
Here's what we're looking at, and we've really appreciated his efforts, and we've kind of tried to give him the reins and we are in it for the Second Amendment, not just for the state of Massachusetts, but in the overall. So anything we can do to help is, we're happy to do it. But you did mention Jim and his spices, and I got to tell you, I went up to Hunton Jackman, Maine with Jim and John Green, our director of education and training, and Garrett
and me. Yeah.
And let me tell you, those spices don't come out of nowhere. That man can cook.
Yeah, that guy can cook.
I ate better in hunting camp than I have in years.
Oh yeah. The hunting part of hunting camp is like almost secondary to the eating. Yeah.
As it should be, right, guys?
Absolutely.
Before we let you go, we have one question. It's a fun question, I promise, that we ask every guest, and that's if money was no object, what would be the one firearm you'd really like to add to the collection?
Money is no object. Holy cow. I told you, I'm a Parker shotgun guy, a Damascus barrel Parkers particularly, but
Yeah.
I don't have a 28 gauge Damascus Parker, and unfortunately those things are about 40 to 50,000 bucks now, and there's a pretty good chance I'm not going to own one, but that would be it.
Wow.
I also like Colt handguns, semi-automatic handguns. I've got a first year production Colt lightweight commander in 45. I have a first year production lightweight commander in 38 Super, but the hard one to get is 9mm, and I don't. There's a few of those running around, but I've never run one to ground, so that would be another one.
Nice. Those are some solid choices, man. I like that.
Discerning flavor.
Yeah.
Well done. I like it. All right, Mark, we'll let you get back to your evening. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Garrett and Jeff, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me on your show tonight.
Thank you for coming. Mark Vaughan, Second Vice President, National Rifle Association. Have a great night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mark Vaughan doing the good work at NRA.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a lot of work, but I like the direction that they're going. I think the right people are in the right place, and it's one of those things where it's like I wish the absolute very best.
I do. We say this when we do classes. I've always been don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The NRA has got some things that it's got to answer for. So I'm not just like a sycophant for the NRA. There's a lot that has to be dealt with and answered for, and it's good to at least hear people say the words that we acknowledge this and we're going to move forward. So I guess we'll see.
The direction's there.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, hey, let's start, one foot in front of the other.
Yep. I remain a supporter of the NRA. We'll see what they do with that going forward. Here we are. It's February. We're getting a little closer to April. Shot heard around the world. So we got another installment of history, right?
Yeah, so where we left off, so we had Lord North's conciliatory resolution. It was, for those that haven't heard that episode yet, it's a really pithy offer, basically saying that
that's pithy with an SS,
but that the colonists could basically, hey, you're welcome to enforce tyranny on yourself and call it self-governance if you'd like. In reality, Parliament only has the power of the pen. For what it's worth. But the power of the sword was in the hands of Lieutenant General Thomas Gage, Commander-in-Chief of the King's Forces in America and Governor of Massachusetts. So in spite of rhetoric coming from British government, British Parliament, Gage was comparatively a pragmatist because he's boots on the ground.
He's on the ground, and he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
And for what it's worth, I mean, all indications say that he felt that the colonists, even the rebellious ones, were still his countrymen, and that there was still the very real problem that he faced of an armed colonial population. They was becoming increasingly defiant. Mm-hmm. Parliament was pouring fuel on the fire. So he made the decision that would ultimately backfire bad enough to change world history. Talk about your all-time backfires. To, enforce this peace by disarming the people. So he had his first big expedition in September of 1774 to the Powdered House in modern-day Somerville. Arguably success, but only just.
Yeah.
Yes, they seized powder and artillery without firing a shot.
But boy, howdy, they did they reap the whirlwind.
But the colonial response, too late to change the outcome, but was unified, focused, and pretty darn fierce. So crowds in the thousands marched in the homes of loyalist officials. They forced resignations. They forced them to flee Boston for safety. They marched on Cambridge and Boston and, borderline were disappointed when the rumors of fighting turned out to be not true.
You mean it's not go time? Dang.
But it's not unreasonable to think that if they had caught the British... The British raid in time.
Oh yeah, the Revolutionary War could have started a little earlier.
We might have been 6 months at war at this point in 1774.
Yep.
So the resistance effort increased. There was a huge focus on gathering intelligence, communications, being able to outpace the British once decisions were made. So Gage's plans for a December of 1774 powder raid in Portsmouth were summarily leaked. Information was relayed, and his troops arrived only to find the cupboards bare, ransacked for all the munitions by colonial resistance groups. Kind of what we have here is we have two ships that are passing dangerously close in the night. Is Gage's people and the Patriots who are trying to beat them to the punch and pull the supplies for themselves.
And they luckily did not face off at that point. Well, luckily or unluckily, I guess, but depending on your perspective.
So the first major confrontation, and this is where we're at in history, between the opposed forces would come Sunday, February 26, 1775, Salem, Massachusetts. So Gage had his eye on another raid, and he tasked its execution to Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Leslie. Leading 250 to 300 men. I couldn't really define a definitive number.
A lot.
Of how many were there, but it was the 64th British Regiment. Now, their orders were to march on Salem to secure the stores of ammunition and cannon believed to be hidden in a section of town known as the North Fields, just on the far side of this small drawbridge across the North River. Now, Colonel Leslie, like Gage, wanted a pragmatic approach. Didn't want to necessarily get into an armed fight.
Understandably.
So tried to avoid confrontation. So the British timed their travels, leaving their station at Castle William, which is now Fort Independence. Left their station at Castle William and landed in Marblehead while people were attending afternoon church service. So kind of tried to sneak through, but I mean, how sneaky can you be with 250 men carrying muskets, dressed in red jackets? So
not very subtle.
Subtle as a freight train, right? So they were spotted, and of course, once their destination was determined, I mean, people kind of knew.
They're going for the Salem Powder House.
Alarm riders took flight, raced ahead of the British, warned Salem's people of the impending forces. Now, the townspeople had their warning. But hundreds of pounds of cannon and munitions and powder, that just doesn't get up and move on its own. They're not loaded on trucks that someone can just start and haul down the street a bit. So a chore under normal circumstances, but, the regulars were coming and they were close, like too close. So in order to save the materials, the colonists needed to buy time.
While some people ran to move the goods, others went to stall the British. They knew they couldn't stop the march by force. I mean, this was the King's Army, of course, one of the finest and most well-trained fighting forces in the world. Violent resistance meant an almost certain death. In the unlikely event you did manage to survive, it'd probably only last long enough to see yourself executed for treason. But what the colonists lacked in muscle, they made up for in brains. Before the British could reach the munitions, they had to cross the frigid North River. There was only one drawbridge they could cross where they could reach the colonists before they were done. The colonists managed to raise the bridge just in time to stop the British troops dead in their tracks. I can see them standing across the river going,
it's a convenient bottleneck.
The British troops were not terribly impressed with the colonists. Tension escalated as this clear act of disobedience drew in crowds of onlookers on both sides of the river, some armed, some not. They're like, okay, here we go. Here we go. Tempers flared as the British troops tried to commandeer nearby flatboats in an attempt to get enough men across the river to force the bridge down. The owners of the boats resisted, going so far as to sink their own boats to prevent their use by the redcoats. One man who was scuttling boats, a Thomas Witcher, was so enraged that despite the February cold, he tore open his shirt and bared his chest in defiance at the British. In the ensuing scuffle, the British say he was, quote, slightly injured, close quote, by a British bayonet. Just but a scratch. Others say an unnamed British soldier gave him an intentional little jab of the tip of the blade to back him off. Just a poke.
Just the tip. Hey, bag it up.
History sometimes points to this moment as the first time that blood was drawn in the nascent American Revolution.
So they just end up in this stalemate, this standoff. So
across a drawbridge.
Yeah. And it's not like a huge river either. But, something had to give. So Colonel Leslie was demanding this bridge to be lowered. And according to him, this is the King's highway. The colonists were under official order to lower the bridge and make way.
How dare you block our advance?
Now the colonists, and this is what I love, and this to me is like quintessential New England. The colonists argued back. It's like, well, no. You're marching on a private lane, and we built the bridge with our own hands and our own money. The bridge is private property, and it's not subject to your order unless it's
ours.
war or declaration of martial law. Like,
And they said it with appropriate accents.
I'm sure they did. So yeah, they're just saying, hey, this is private property. You're trespassing. Shoo, get on with you. So it led to hours of standoff and negotiation, and this is outside in February too, by the way. So as the day went on and night started approaching, Leslie was furious. He was being embarrassed in front of his men by these defiant colonists that are like daring him to do something about it. And he's staring in the face. You know, his other option is to also turn back to Boston, tail tucked between his legs, to report to his bosses that he was unable to accomplish making it to Salem.
I was stymied by a drawbridge.
So legend has it at the peak of one of his rages, Leslie issued an ultimatum to either lower the bridge or be fired upon. Now, Militia Captain John Felt was negotiating with Leslie, and he was trying to remain cool. And at that point, militiamen had started to gather, and the numbers weren't as dramatically in Leslie's favor as they were when the day started. So he needed to give Leslie a way out. So let's
give him an off ramp.
Give him a little bit of a rope here. So according to Leslie, he couldn't honorably tell the governor he found nothing if he never got to where he was going. If he never got across the bridge, like how is he supposed to say that he searched, right? By this time, the colonists had completed the move, but they also couldn't just like openly back down either after all the day's events. So the opening was the colonists offered a compromise. They would let Leslie and his troops cross the bridge without further interruption, but the troops would only be allowed to march 500 feet-ish into North Salem, and upon finding nothing, turn around, get out, go back to Boston.
There you go.
So therefore, they could honestly say they searched the area and found nothing, and Colonel Leslie actually agreed to this.
Nobody has to lie. Nobody has to lie. Upon finding no munitions, the British began marching back to Marblehead. The Danvers and Salem militias escorted them along the way. Since there were no official hostilities, orders were issued to the colonists that the British troops were to remain unmolested in their effective retreat. An interesting footnote in history, neither militia had a drummer with them, so they both marched to the beat of the British drummers. Rumor has it that while the British played Yankee Doodle on their way to Salem, they played The World Turned Upside Down on the march back.
So to this day, the powder raid on Salem is still known this side of the pond as Leslie's retreat. While there were no shots fired, many on both sides of the Atlantic felt the Americans kind of took their first official stand for liberty here at Salem.
Yep.
Charles Endicott later wrote of the incident that they're trying to butter up Colonel Leslie and thank him for being not as aggressive as he could have been. But he said, by the prudence and praiseworthy forbearance of Colonel Leslie, any serious collision with the troops was happily averted. So to this day, a monument stands in the Old North Bridge in Salem, adorned with a plaque that reads slightly differently. It says, quote, in the Revolution, the first armed resistance to the royal authority was made at this bridge, 26 February 1775, by the people of Salem. The advance of 300 British troops, led by Lieutenant Colonel Leslie and sent by General Gage to seize munitions of war, was here arrested.
We put a stop to them. We put a stop to them.
So this win may have been just the confidence boost the colonists needed to fully commit to defending themselves from the British rule.
Yeah, they knew that this was like the first indication that they had that they could actually make a difference and put it,
with proper intelligence, good communication, they could outmaneuver the rank and file redcoats. They had the flexibility. They were,
the redcoats are not invincible and they're not unstoppable.
Yeah, but small numbers and decentralized command meant that they could be nimble. And when it came to staring down the British military, they had an example that the British blinked. They blinked first. So if David could beat Goliath, maybe just maybe, they could stand a chance to win against the British.
Maybe they could. So there we go, getting closer and closer to April of the 250th anniversary of April 1775.
That closes out February, so we are
We're
6
in March.
weeks, give or take.
We're within striking distance of the shot heard around the world. So goal is hopefully getting some stuff together for the 250th anniversary. More to come on that. And of course, we have our annual meeting coming up in May, on May the 18th at Cyprian Keys. Looking forward to that as well. Good stuff. And the most recent goal raffle sold out in like a few hours again. So
It was quick.
yeah, you really got to stay on top of that if you want to take part. But really good stuff. So keep an eye on social media. Keep an eye on the Friday news or the email blasts that come from Goal. And if you're interested to jump into that, please do so. But you gotta be quick. You can't wait around because people buy up those tickets real quick. Well, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, on YouTube at the Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.